Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in again here as we get a little bit further on into our English 1102 course online. It is first thing in the morning for me, just getting into the office, so I'm going to log myself into Blackboard. So I am recording this on Wednesday morning, another beautiful one if you happen to be in the Chicagoland area here. Just getting into our course. So it's Wednesday. Our first due date for Unit 1 was Tuesday, which means you finished up the Introduce Yourself discussion board, the student homepage. You will have noticed that there's overlap in terms of those ways of introducing yourself, but they're sort of intentional. So I wanted both to use the homepage so everyone sort of had a place where they could introduce themselves and provide a picture, links to things, whatever they wanted. But also to use the discussion board early on in our course in Unit 1 here in a fairly low stakes and informal way. So it does repeat what I'm asking you to do in the homepage. But for those of you who are new to Blackboard or who haven't used the discussion board too much, it's a good opportunity to use that tool again in a fairly informal way, so you're not trying to use it for the first time but also write a kind of formal essay or paragraph or something a little more formal, so you're worried about sort of the technical side but also the composition side. So intentional overlap in terms of the assignments. Hopefully everyone has read through the orientation stuff. You'll probably notice that the video is a couple semesters old. I haven't done a new one yet. So a couple of things might look a little bit different in the video versus our actual course, but again, I think you get the basic idea of how our course works. There's units, there's due dates, you can coordinate those two things, and that's pretty much it. I've tried to make the navigation as simple as possible, but nothing's perfect. What's obvious to me and to 5 other people might take 5 other people a little while to figure out. So it does take some getting used to, as far as each online course that you may have taken before. Okay, so you've done the orientation quiz, looked through that material, you've introduced yourself in a couple of different ways in Unit 1, and so now we move on to Unit 2. So the first thing that I always do, and again, I'm not taking the course, but it's good for me to be aware of, like, I need to know due dates too, right? So I always, before I dive into the next unit, I always look at the due dates list, not just for Unit 2, which is a pretty quick turnaround this Thursday, but also how things sort of space out for the next few units beyond that one. So I look for 3 is around the next Tuesday, 4 Thursday, so you can begin to see the pattern that I've tried to set up here. And the Tuesday, Thursday is a fairly quick turnaround, because otherwise it would be Tuesday, Friday, and then you're looking at sort of like Saturday, Sunday to do the majority of the work for the next unit. So it's hard to find a good way of organizing due dates, especially in a very quick format like ours, the 8-week format. So remember, this would normally be a 16-week course, so if we have a couple of days to do something, that would actually be like 4 days or practically a whole week in the 16-week format. So again, you just have to make sure you block out time to be doing this course. You can't wait till the last minute and then get in and then race to the assignment part and then try to do that and then sort of check your work against the content stuff, so you're really working backwards. I said this in my first video, and it's worth reiterating because I can sort of tell when people have done that. And obviously, like it or not, Blackboard timestamps everything that you do. So if I'm seeing discussion board posts and 2 replies happen on the due date at like 10:30 p.m., 10:35 p.m., and 10:37 p.m., almost regardless of the quality of that, and it's unlikely to be very high quality given that time frame, but I'm sort of colored by those timestamps. I can't imagine that you've invested very much in doing good work. So, I don't base your grade on that exactly, but it does, like it or not, sort of affect the way I read what I'm looking at. So, as is mentioned a couple of times, like in the orientation stuff, it's really important to be successful online to block out time, just like you would if it was an actual class that you had to physically attend. If that was a Monday from 10 to 10:50, you would block that time out on a daily planner or a calendar on your phone or whatever you use. You wouldn't block that out, but then put other stuff in there to do, because you knew, I mean, you can't do that, right? You can't be in two places at once, unless you figure that out, which that really benefit me right about now. But I'm thinking of the possibilities, right? And if you figured that out, then you wouldn't be taking English 1102. I get it. Okay. But if you need to do the same thing for an online course, wherever it fits in your, framework, your calendar, that's the flexible part. You have to block that out as not just time to do online while I iron clothes, do something else, try to read content on my phone while I'm driving. I think that's illegal, so don't even try. Not to mention dangerous. But block time out to do your online work just like you would if you had to be physically present somewhere in a classroom. So it's there in your calendar. It doesn't slip to the bottom of the list just because it doesn't have a specific time, that I've told you have to do your work Friday at 10 a.m. or whatever it happens to be. Treat it like a class. The nice part is that you can sort of decide when the class meets, if you want to call it that. But I'm telling you up front, time management is just so key to being successful in an online course. It gives you the time to read material, to think about what you're doing, to not always do all of the work all at once. So sometimes you do a post, you do a reading, you do a post. There's time between those things. You do some replies or a reply in a discussion board. It's not all just one lump that you're trying to race through. Okay, I'm sure that you already can sort of commonsensically guess this stuff, but it's worth my saying too. Let's look at Unit 2, which is due again this Thursday, so pretty quick turnaround. Unit 2, what is literature? Again, we're not really even getting into the sort of composition side of our course yet, which is the main sort of content. So we spend a brief sort of half of this unit just talking about plagiarism, a major issue for us. There's hardly anything to say about it. If you don't know what plagiarism is at this point, I just don't believe you. I just don't. I think everybody kind of knows what it is. And nobody enters into a course like this now thinking, I'm going to plagiarize that final essay. That'll be my strategy. So it might seem kind of silly for me to even have a plagiarism section here, almost like I've now invited that into the conversation. But come a final essay time, right at the end of the term, and ours is even trickier than normal because our end of term, right, is the end of the whole fall term. So you have finals in other classes. It's obviously like post-Thanksgiving, winter vacation, so you might have, holiday plans, travel, all this other stuff starts flying around, snow starts flying around. And so sometimes people just reach that final deadline, things haven't worked out for the final essay, and they make a really bad choice at the last minute to plagiarize, and hopefully, you won't get caught, but you always do. It's just so easy for you to find stuff on the web. That means it's easy for me to find stuff too. And I'll repeat this once we get, towards the end, but I hate it when people plagiarize, and I don't hate them as individuals. And again, I don't think that they enter into the course like now thinking, I'm really going to plagiarize that final essay. That'll work out perfect. I just hate the fact that they get so kind of stressed at that wrong moment and make a really bad choice, but it has such bad consequences. You fail, obviously, the paper, the class, it could go further and become part of your academic record and all this stuff. It's never the right choice. But I see it every once in a while, so I want to put it on your radar now so that I can basically get it off of your radar from here on in. Plagiarism. There, we've talked about it. Now you can forget about it. But don't do it. Okay, literary terms and literary analysis, and then our first reading, it's called What is Literature? It's in a PDF here, so it's not in our textbook. I wish it was, but we use this. Hopefully you've got it. It's a custom edition. Oh, custom edition. So it's actually stories that I've chosen for this edition of the textbook, that you don't go to just any old bookstore and get it. So it's much cheaper, it's way more portable than just about any other textbook I've seen, so it's nice, you know. But that means that some of the stuff that I'd like in there, like this What is Literature piece, a couple of other things that we'll look at, I have to provide through a PDF here, so it's not quite as user-friendly as the book would be. But since our study of composition is sort of focused through our reading of literary works, and I almost hesitate to use that term, because part of what we want to think about here, before we even get to the composition part of our composition class, is this whole idea of literature. And that word comes with so much baggage, and some of it's positive, some of it's negative. Sometimes you have both sort of positive and negative connotations in your head at the same time. So we're not looking to really resolve that or fix that problem, but to sort of acknowledge it here. And so before we do any of the readings for our class or talk about the sort of writing part of it, we do another reading and discussion board here where we sort of reflect on and think about what is literature, how have you encountered it before, what preconceptions do you have about it, and maybe what new ways of thinking about it does the PDF or does the author or the editor of our book, who's the author of this piece, what does she get you thinking about that maybe you haven't thought about before? So again, another fairly low stakes discussion board, in as much as I'm looking for investment of thought, that you've read the material, that you've read other people's posts, but I'm not grading for grammar, for like all of those sort of nitty-gritty composition things that we will get into as we get closer to the essays. So you're really just concerned to like kind of get into a discussion with your classmates without feeling like you're going to be graded on every like nitpicky little sentence thing or MLA citation or any of that stuff. So I'm looking for investment of energy, but we're not too concerned with all the composition stuff that we'll talk about as we get a little bit further into our course. Okay, so that's a lot to think about. For good or for ill, YouTube has upped my video limit here, so now I ramble on for even longer than I used to. But hopefully, again, it sort of connects you to me, connects you to the course, makes you feel more invested, and ultimately improves it improves your success or your chances for success in the course. Okay, as always, if you have any questions, be in touch with me, and I will talk to everybody soon.